بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده وعلى آله وأصحابه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد قال الله تعالى في القرآن المجيد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان صدق الله العظيم. My dear respected brothers, elders, fellow students, normally what happens is when the month of Ramadan comes, everyone is making preparations, and you get different sort of preparations in different demographics. You get the aunties and the mothers in the homes a month advance, rolling up the samosas and all the other pastries. The men are doing all the shopping, trying to keep the women in the house happy. And you've got people in the masjid making preparations for Ramadan, for Taraweeh, for iftar and things like that. But this is all well and good. But the main preparation is how we can spiritually benefit ourselves in this blessed month. If you look into the seerah, as I mentioned that I make a lot of reference to seerah during the classes I do, we find in the seerah Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, from the advent of the blessed month of Rajab, he would make preparations for Ramadan. Now, if we were to ask ourselves, does Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam need to prepare himself for Ramadan? He doesn't. There has been no greater worshipper than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But his lifestyle, his blessed lifestyle, is a practical example for the ummah, you and I. So why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would make preparations 2 months in advance? It was a lesson for you and I. Why? Because you and I as humans, we are creatures of habit. And anything we become habitual of and accustomed to, it becomes our second nature. So the whole year we would possibly, to say, for lack of a better context, that we may spend our time in ignorance or shortcomings in ibadah, to prepare ourselves both mentally and spiritually and also physically as well, for the blessed month of Ramadan. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us that we make preparations in advance. If you look in the lives of the pious predecessors, how they would prepare in months in advance, not just 2 months. You find and this is something we should always study, the blessed lives of pious predecessors, and try to inculcate their life and their practices into ours. There were shuyukh of the past who 6 months in advance they used to prepare for the month of Ramadan, because it's all about conditioning our body, mind and soul. You'll find that we're living in the society that we're living in today. Our time outside Ramadan and the time within Ramadan is no different. But you get people who make concerns. And then you have some people who may live a life of sort of negligence and ignorance, but come Ramadan, they become completely a total different person. Before Ramadan, they're driving in the cars, blasting music. As soon as Ramadan comes, the music gets replaced with nasheed. And some people may come to the impression that, oh, look at him, he's become a Ramadan Muslim. First of all, to assume that sort of thought is wrong. It's to have that ill thought of a Muslim brother. May be the case that this Ramadan may be the means of this person's hidayah. Or if it isn't, that at least in the month of Ramadan, he has that fear, that much iman within that person, that he feels that he needs to bring about change. But so this is what the month of Ramadan, the effect it has on us. But today what we're going to discuss is how to maximize our time in this blessed month. And I'm going to focus on 2 things. And before I go into those 2 points, just a bit of, as we all know, blessings of Ramadan, we're all aware it's as we find in like the Hafiz mentioned, the virtues of Quran, from the Quran with regards to the fadail of Ramadan. Other virtues we find where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he mentioned it's the month of mercy. It's also the month of forgiveness. And it's also the month of pardoning, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees many souls that have been destined and doomed for hell. And we find also within narrations that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increases the rizq of a believer during this blessed month. But apart from these apparent and well-known blessings, if you look into the history of Ramadan and of this month, you'll find many of things that events and occurrences that took place which made this month even more significant. One of the early things and most obvious things, we find that the opening wahi revelation was made in this month. For that reason, there's a link between month of Ramadan and the Quran. That's why the ulama advises that we create a more special bond with the Quran, and we'll get to that in the later part of this reminder. Other instances was when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was crowned with Nabuwa. His blessed wife, his first love, Khadija radiallahu ta'ala anha, 10 years into the prophethood, she passed away. Then on the second year of Hijrah, the first holy expedition took place, the Battle of Badr. And then 6 years following that, the famous conquest of Mecca, where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once he was exiled from his homeland, he had Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reinstated him with the great nobility of conquesting that city that he was once exiled from. And then 92 Hijri, the conquest of Andalusia, modern day Spain, when the Umayyad dynasty took over. And then years later, we find Ain Jalut, when the Mamluks, who were the Mamluks? They were slaves of Egypt, who when the Mongols came to attack, and I don't want to go into it, there's a great history of the Mongols. We know what they did, pillaging and killing and destroying one of the most powerful empires. But the Mamluks, people who are slaves, stood up in defense of Islam and defeated the Mongols. And then you have the famous Battle of Hittin, Salahuddin Ayyubi, when he conquered the Blessed Lands and took control of Palestine and Jerusalem away from the Crusaders. So there's many a significant historical significance with this month. And that is why the ulama say that Allah's special favors are within this month. But these special favors are there for us, providing we are to take advantage of it. And this is why I wanted to make 2 points. If you study the fiqh of ibadah, you'll find that ulama in certain kitabs, they make mention of wisdoms and the hikmah behind a particular ibadah. Even so as much to going down to wudu, why we wash a particular part of our hands, bodies, and why we wash our face. There's hikmah. The ulama have gone down to great research and explaining the wisdom behind this. Similarly, when it comes to our time-sensitive ibadah, like salah, like fasting in the month of Ramadan, like hajj, ulama mentioned there's great wisdom in behind the ibadah of Allah, and that as far as time sensitiveness goes. And the 2 things that they mention is, number 1, these wisdoms there are to create 2 great traits. Number 1, which is discipline, and number 2, time management. Right? Number 1, discipline. What is meant by discipline? That as believers we're not meant for this world. Like in the famous Hadith Qudsi, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that ad-dunya khuliqat lakum. The world has been created for you. Like in layman's we say the world is yours. But then Allah further on says that wa innakum khuliqtum lil akhirah, but you have been created for the akhirah. We're not meant for this world. Everything in this world is at our disposal to use as we need in accordance to our necessities. But Allah has created us for the akhirah, right? So we do not live as believers. We do not live in this world in accordance to our whims and desires and our flexibilities. Our life is meant for us to be lived in accordance to the desires of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes reference to it in the Quran. Inna salati wa nusuki wa mahyaya wa mati lillahi rabbil alameen. My worshipping, my sacrifices, my life and my death is all meant for Allah, the Lord of the universe. So this is in a nutshell, this is the life description of a believer. So when we have Salah, Zuhr at a particular time, Maghrib at a particular time, Fajr at such a difficult time, but we get up and for the servitude of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is that creating within us? That discipline, mentally, spiritually, and physically, that I have to do this because my Allah wants me to do this. So number one, the wisdom of ibadah being at times being time sensitive is number one, is that it creates a discipline. And number two, time management. Something that you students are probably accustomed to. And if you're not, then you're meant to be accustomed to, because you guys have a set time period for lectures, revision, etc. And then you have your own needs like food and sleep. So we fall into this sort of schedule. So what ibadah teaches us is that we manage our time. Those of us who are what we call, like in layman's term, gym rats, right? What do? If you have for example, a 5-day split in gym, what will you do? You make it your priority that, in order for me to go through, for example, push-pull leg, upper lower body workout, right? That I need to fit my workout in such a time that I can finish my complete workout. And if at a day that because of work or studies I can't make up, then you have those 2 days to work with to fit those workouts in, right? What's that? Time management. Similarly, ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it teaches us time management. I have Fajr, Zuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, right? So a believer wouldn't think that, I'll fit my salah where I need to. Rather, a believer thinks that how can I fit everything else of my life around salah? Both are similar if you look at it. You'll get your salah fitted in some way or the other. But you prioritizing ibadah, therefore you make everything else secondary. So what do you make primary? The rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the two wisdoms of ahkamat and the injunctions of Allah being at fixed times. That we discipline our body to understand that my life is not meant for Allah, and we create time management. And this is where we will benefit the most from the month of Ramadan. How? That if we can get these two traits within our life, our month of Ramadan will be going smoothly and properly in the right manner. If we can manage our time properly. As students, you have your lectures and your studies. These are your priorities in life as well. But as a believer, our priority is what? The rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. During the month of Ramadan, naturally, we get this this fervor and this boost in iman. We want to do more, right? But the first thing what we need to do is that we prioritize our month of Ramadan so much that we can maximize the benefits and the blessings of this month of Ramadan the most. And this is why I'm emphasizing on the point of time management. You have lectures from morning to evening, and then some of you might have to make preparations for iftar, and then you've got your faraid and things like that, and that will exhaust you. And then the main ibadat and what that will boost us in our iman is our nawafil, is our optional deeds, it's our sunnah deeds. No person reaches the levels of piety simply by restricting and limiting themselves to faraid. One of the biggest deceptions in deen, for a believer, right? One of the biggest deceptions is when a person is content with the iman. I will say this again and understand this. One of the biggest deceptions for a believer is when a person is content with the iman. That alhamdulillah, I pray my 5 times daily salah, I fast in the month of Ramadan, I give my zakat, I will go hajj, or I've been hajj, alhamdulillah, I'm doing my part. This is the biggest deception. Because now you think that you're doing your part, you're content. Where do you and I stand in comparison to the likes of great Sahaba who gave the whole life in the path of Allah, who gave all the wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who had even been disowned and even had to stand in enemy lines in front of their own beloved fathers and family members for the sake of deen. And yet when they were coming to the last moments of their life, they were saying to their fellow companions, I do not know how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will deal with me. I do not know how I will fare in the akhirah. And we become content with our iman and our deen, that alhamdulillah, praying my 5 times daily salah. No one reaches the levels of piety through faraid. Those are must. Understand this. That whether we like it or not, we'll have to fulfill the mandatory rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even if Allah did not put any ajr, any rewards behind it, we'll have to do it. It's mandatory. To reach the heights of taqwa, right, what do we have to do? It's we have to implement the sunan and the nawafil, the optional practices. That's what boosts us up in iman. But unfortunately, what happened, and I say this time and time again, that we're living in a day and era where we're constantly bid'ah policing. Oh, this is bid'ah, brother. This is not, brother. You don't have to do this, brother. You don't have to do this, sister. And we don't do it ourselves, but yet we're discouraging. To look at a sunnah and say it is only a sunnah, it is a great disrespect and offense to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam make his sunnah apparent? So that you and I can implement it. And then we just say that it is only sunnah. How can we even utter those words? It's through the sunnah that we reach the levels of taqwa. Look into the annals of history, you'll find that the great pious predecessors, they reached the levels of taqwa and reached the levels of piety through implementation of sunnah. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not mean for us to implement the sunnah, he would have done it in secret, like certain worship of his. One of the reasons why tahajjud did not become fard upon the ummah is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it sometimes openly and sometimes secretly. One of the greatest disputes of Ramadan is Tarawih is 8 rakats, Tarawih is 20 rakats, right? I'm not going to go in there because it's going to create a dispute again. But there's a wisdom behind. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed 20, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed 8, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed more, and also Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed even more. Imam Malik rahimahullah says that Tarawih should be 36 rakats. Now let's see how many of you can manage 36. We dispute with 20. But why there's different views? Because sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it openly, sometimes Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it in secret. Why? Because if something he did in great consistency in front of the ummah, then Allah would have made it wajib or fard upon us. So there's great wisdoms. But those very sunnahs we disregard, and then we wonder why our iman is at a low. It's because we have neglected sunnah. This is one of the reasons why I was focused on that weekly classes I do on sunnah, so that we implement sunnah. So in order for us to reach those heights of taqwa and for us to benefit from the month of Ramadan in the best of manners, we must implement those optional, those nawafil and those sunnah practices that we find within the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First and foremost, what we need to do is create our link with Quran. Wallahi, the greatest deprivation within the ummah today is that we have no wabasta, we have no connection with the Quran. The Quran was sent as a miracle, as a blessing, and as a navigation system for this ummah. Whenever we feel lost, we should delve in the Quran. The Sahaba used to say that whenever I wanted Allah to talk to me, I used to open the Quran. Whenever I wanted to talk to Allah, I would pray to Allah. And I'll get to that talking part later on. But today, we have left the Quran only for two instances. Generically speaking, one, when somebody dies in our family, then we just pull out the Quran that's collecting dust on the shelves, and we feel like we need to read some Quran now. And even that, we don't do it with complete sincerity. We just whiz through it, and then, alhamdulillah, I've done my part. And number two, during the month of Ramadan. The rights of the Quran, the ulama mention, is that the Quran must be recited on a daily basis. Daily basis, we should have a connection. The ulama have certain prescriptions. Those of us who are well versed with Quran, for the huffaz, the ulama say that 3 juz should be recited on a daily basis. So the Quran can be completed 10 days, but it's not the reason. But one of the main reason is so that the Quran of the hafiz is intact. But for an average layman like you and I, that we should try on this is outside the days of Ramadan, that we should pray 1 juz a day. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Ask yourself how many of us can do this. Ask yourselves that, am I reciting daily a juz of Quran? If not, how much of Quran even if you can't do that, half a juz, is that doable? A quarter juz on a daily basis? Even 1 ruku, 1 page. How many of us can say that we have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that on a daily basis that I recite the Quran? And then we wonder, why is my life so empty? We have it all. We've got the best of whips. We've got a good car. We've got a good income. We've got a good livelihood, right? Unless you're driving a Fiat 500. But again, No offense to anyone who's driving one of those, by the way. But we've got it all, but we still feel discontent. You know, I've got a good house, livelihood, job, everything seems right. Why am I feeling empty? It's that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that's missing. Allah is the one who puts situations and circumstances in our life, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can remove those obstacles in our lives as well. But when we don't have that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah has no need for us. This is why the first thing that we need to do is one of the first things that the ummah, one of the signs of qiyamah is that one of the first things that the ummah will lose connection with is with the Quran. And look at the reality of the ummah today. How many of us have that connection and that wabasta with the Quran today? Daily, just daily, we can't even recite a page of the Quran. But in the month of Ramadan, that Quran should be increased. Well, now, I'm not going to scare you, but this is a reality what the ulama and the pious predecessors prescribe. That in Ramadan, what should we aim for? Those people who are accustomed to 1 juz a day outside the month of Ramadan, they should be doing 3 juz a day in Ramadan. Thereby, in every ashara, every 10 days of Ramadan, we're doing a khatam of the Quran. Take that challenge upon with yourselves. Take that challenge. I challenge myself like that in the month of Ramadan. That I try to do a khatam in every ashara. Sometimes I will probably fail, sometime more, but at least we've got that target, because that Ramadan should be that time where we increase our ibadah. So 3 juz a day. Again, like I said, time management and discipline. That ask yourself, okay, it takes me half an hour, 45 minutes, 1 hour to finish a juz of the Quran. Plant it throughout the day, that after Fajr I'll recite this much, after Zuhr I'll recite this, or after, so whichever time, fix it, create a schedule, and where we can create that link with the Quran, and not just for Ramadan, and then mashallah did the Khatam of Ramadan, and then from Eid, mashallah, the Quran's again back in the shelf collecting dust. We make that intention. Remember I said right at the beginning, that intention is vital. We make that intention that I create this bond with the Quran, I want to keep this lifelong. Nobody gives up something once they've achieved. A person who goes to gym, once they've got the body, they don't give up, do they? They know, because the moment they give up, that body belly is going to come back, right? So they keep maintaining, they change the workout program. If they don't want to carry on being bulk, they want to be lean, what do? They change the workout, the split, they change the diet, but now they're going to meet, because they achieved the goal now. Similarly with the Quran, we should have a set of plan that we keep this consistent in our life. The biggest loss of the ummah is because, do you know, one of the things that the ulama say, that when the ummah starts losing their relationship with the Quran, then Allah will deprive the ummah from the barakah of wahi. The barakah of wahi meaning the barakah of the Quran. The promises of Allah that we find in the Quran, the ummah will be deprived. And let's take a reflection into our own lives. How sometimes we feel emptiness and things like that. Why do we feel the emptiness? That connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As I mentioned, that whenever we want to make a talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I said I'll go back to this. Another thing I wanted you to focus on Ramadan. That do we talk to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many of us, I don't want to again raise your hands, think about it. When was the last time I talked to Allah? Have you ever just sat down somewhere and just started a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You might think this sounds a bit crazy. If I was to do it, some people might think I'm dulali, right? But we do things, stupid things in love, right? When someone's in love with somebody, they do stupid things. And if someone notices it, they don't care, because they know they're doing it for this beloved of theirs, right? Those of us who, I'm not pointing, I'm just saying naturally when somebody's in love, they do stupid things. And anyone notices, like, they don't care because it's meant for that beloved of theirs. So what if someone calls us dulali, if I'm talking to Allah and someone says, what's wrong with this dude? He's talking to somebody. He's talking to himself. There's nobody else around. When was the last time we've created that conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And I'm not talking about dua. Dua is something that we've completely forgot. We again think dua is limited to after Fard Salah, we raise our hands, dua, that's it. And even that we don't do it properly. month of Ramadan is that month to create that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Last year, I was doing a talk. Funny enough, it just fell. It fell on the 14th of February. It was in the ISOC, Newcastle ISOC, and the talk was titled "Romanticizing Our Relationship with Allah Subhanahu wa Taala." And I said that today this has become an alienated concept. We hear the word romance, and our definition of it is something else. We sort of get this whole different understanding of romance. And when we do start to understand romance, can we ever understand the concept that how do I romanticize my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because the whole concept of romance has been adulterized and it's been abused. The definition of love has been abused, and that's why you have so many definitions and forms of love. Infatuation is some kind of love. Crush is another definition of. Whereas these are all just modern concepts. In reality, it's either love or lust. There's no other word. There's no such thing as crush and infatuation. And what's this other one I came across recently? So a few months ago, someone said a sister called me and I'm taking her advice. I'm in a situationship. Wallahi, I never knew what that meant. I had to go into Urban Dictionary because I didn't want to make this sister feel like, oh, now he doesn't know. And actually, while I was on the phone, I went open Urban Dictionary and I was like, yeah, sister, I'm listening. And she's explaining the situation. And she's, I'm in a situationship. And I was looking, I froze for a few seconds. I go, this is something. Like, situationship is a form of relationship. This is the world we're living in, that our human relationships have so many labels. And is there any wonder why our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so faltered? That's why I always say, and you can argue and debate with me, and I say to some people, love, it's either love or lust. One or the other. You either truly love someone, and that love will be pure, and will not be sensual, and will not be sexual, and will not have ill thoughts and ill intents. And if it does, then it's the total opposite. It's because of these so many different type of labels, we don't understand the concept of being in love with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that was the talk I was focusing on, that we need to create that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find stories of the pious. Rabia Basira rahmatullahi alayha. Those who don't know, one of the most famous women of the past, one of the greatest saints. People used to call her Dulali as well, because the love that she had for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people could not understand it. She even wrote a famous poem. If you have, those of you have never, you'll find it probably in the form of a nasheed on YouTube or something. It's called Araftul Hawa. And if you listen, understand the poem or study the English translation, wallah, it's such a beautiful poem. We listen to some poetry by Shakespeare or some poetry by modern contemporary poets, and I think, wow, I'm going to use this and send it as an SMS to my significant other. But study that poem written by Rabia Basriya and you'll understand what love is. It's such a beautiful, and who is she talking about? She's talking about Allah. If you were not to know that this was about Allah, you'd think that she was writing this about her a love of a man or something like that. But she's talking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this is a reality, that this is the relationship that we're meant to have with Allah, that it should be a relationship of love. Allah does not want us to fear Him. If you look into the Quran, Allah always refers Him to as Rahman al-Rahim, Ghafoor al-Wadud. So many places. Even the opening of the Quran, forget Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala introduce Himself to the world as? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, the Lord of the universe. Who is He? Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He did not say the punisher, the chastiser, or anything like that. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. He wants us to know that I am merciful, I am the beloved, I am the compassion. This is the relationship we should be having with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we need to focus in the month of Ramadan, that how I can create this bond. That sit down, honestly, seriously, that sit down sometimes and think and just make a conversation with Allah. You don't need to put your hands up like this. Even our dua, the usul and principles of an adab of dua, there's a certain way. We don't just put our hands up and say, Allah, give me this. What do we do when sometimes as a child, and we all have been children at one point in our life, right? Now, in a normal generic family household, what happens? The father is the bit stern one, right? unless the mother is the one who has the pants in the house. Generally, the father is the stern one, right? And the mother tends to be a soft one. So we go to the dad sometimes, but we don't. Where we know that we're not going to get what we can from our father. Who do we go? We pull our mother's attention. Mommy, please, I love you. Da 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 da. We butter her up and everything, right? And then we know finally the mother gives in and gives it to us, right? Unless, or sometimes the father's soft one. Usually fathers are soft more towards their daughters than towards their sons, right? It's same person, but with the son they're different, with the daughter they're different. So the daughter will probably know, if I go and pull on my dad's hand and make a cute face, flash my eyebrows, and he'll just, okay, better just take it. We do all this to get from humans, but with Allah, oh Allah, give me this. And then we wonder, why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not given? We need to butter up Allah as well, not figuratively speaking, but yes, this is why there's a whole adab of dua. How do we start dua with? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We start sweet talking Allah. Oh Allah, you're the most merciful, you're the most forgiving, you're the most compassionate. I am nothing, you are everything. This is how you start your dua. First of all, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, we send salawat upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Why? One of the main reasons, again, going back to the sweet talking part, who is Allah's favorite? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So when we send salutations to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Allah sees this, Allah hears this. That not only is He praising me, He is sending salutations to my beloved. Right? So we start with hamd of Allah and salawat upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And then we present our feebleness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا أَنفُسَنَا رَبَّنَا اغْفِرْ لَنَا. We say, Allah, I am the most sinful person. And if you do not forgive me, then I will be the greatest of losers. Oh Allah, forgive me. So we first, after praising and sending salutations upon Rasulullah, we seek Allah's forgiveness. If we are not worthy in the court of Allah, do you think Allah will give us? Right? If we know somebody that we need something and we need to get something from somebody, we won't go to the person that we don't have favors, we can't pull favors with, or we're not in good terms with. And if we have to desperately go to that person, what do we do first? We make amends, right? So make your amends with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why we do istighfar. رَبَّنَا ظَلَمْنَا رَبَّنَا فَغْفِرْ لَنَا ذُنُوبَنَا لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ سُبْحَانَكَ. And then what we do, we present our needs to Allah. Once we've asked Allah for forgiveness, and with the hope that Allah will and has forgiveness, then, oh Allah, give me this, oh Allah, give me that. And we make dua for our parents, we make dua for our needs, our exams, etc. This is the adab of dua. The dua that we do, we don't even do it correctly in the right manner, and then we ask and wonder that why is Allah not answering my questions? So utilize this month. In the previous ummah, in order to reach the levels of taqwa and piety, people were adopting rahbaniyah, what we call monasticism, right? Celibacy. Like you find in previous, even in the Sharia of Isa alayhi salam, it was a thing. In Islam, we don't have monasticism, right? We don't believe in rahbaniyah. But the concept was that in order for them to reach the levels of piety, they had to abstain from needs and necessities of life. So they wouldn't enjoy the pleasures of life, good food and things like that. They would restrict their diet, and they would not get married. So they had no sexual relationships. They would be complete celibate. And that was their goal, to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam came as Sirat al-Mustaqim. It wasn't too harsh like the Sharia of Musa alayhi salam, wasn't as lenient as the Sharia of Isa alayhi salam. It was a balance between both, and Islam then gave hope to the average people, to the ummah at large, that you do not need to be a celibate to become a muttaqi. You do not need to be a celibate to be a favorite of Allah. With you being married and having your and being able to eat and enjoy food and all the luxuries of so-called luxuries of life, you can still attain taqwa. This was the teaching that Islam gave. But again, what does the month of Ramadan do? It puts limitations and restrictions. What are those limitations and restrictions teaching us? That these necessities of life are only just that and nothing more. And overindulgence in it, into these luxuries and necessities of life will only lead us to what? Ignorance. And it will distance us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the wisdoms of fasting in the month of Ramadan. It's not just to stay hungry, it's to create that discipline. Allah said no food and drink, not even water. Like sometimes the non-Muslims do not even water. They get surprised, no, not even water, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says for the married people that you have to stay away from your spouses from this time to that time. Outside that time, you can attend to your marital relationships, right? This is creating that discipline. But also Allah is teaching us that these limitations are there to understand that these necessities and requirements of a human are only just that. An overindulgence will create a weakness in our iman. When we have that, this is why you find in Sufism that they teach you zuhd, they teach you abstinence, to discipline our body, and to like controlling of diet and controlling of sleep and things like that. Why is that? The body will need a certain amount. Those of you who are medical students, you know that this much sleep will be more than sufficient. And now they say, there was a time they said you need 8 hours sleep to function. We all can say that you don't need 8 hours of sleep to function, especially you students who are probably studying all night and etc. You still get through the day, albeit maybe through an energy drink or something like that, but you can still function, right? Those researchers are just generic. But the Sufi concept is there to create that abstinence. Similarly, and what's the abstinence? The aim of the abstinence is to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where we need to create that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala using this month of Ramadan. I'm not saying in the month of Ramadan that completely restrict your diet, because then what will happen if you don't have the right food and nourishment, then forget your nawafil, you won't be able to fulfill your faraid as well. Ramadan is there to also be enjoyed. There's no like restriction. Those people who say that it's a month of abstinence, so we shouldn't be eating and enjoying. No, this Islam does not restrict a person. You're sitting down, and those of you who have a home to go back to during the month of Ramadan, because I know some of you are foreign students and some of you are living away from home, and probably won't, and you'll probably realize during the month of Ramadan how hard it is to fast without being in the company of family, and breaking your fast without you'll realize this now. قَدْرُ النِّعْمَةِ بَعْدَ الزَّوَالِ النِّعْمَةِ, that you only realize the true value of a blessing in its absence. And I'm sure you can all relate, right? So, but get together as in the MPF or whatever, that make iftar together. Do not try your best not to make iftar alone. It shouldn't be at a time, and in fact, those of you who are able financially and things like that, invite one another, your friends to your homes, to your accommodations, make iftar or make a setup, and create. And this is an opportunity to create that brotherhood and sisterhood, right, amongst yourselves. This is the month that you should, even if you're financially not able to do a full course meal or something, make a simple dish, right? But do ikram in the month of Ramadan. You don't know the circumstances of another student. They may be struggling financially, they can't make food, or they don't have that. And if you're smart enough, you'll be able to pick up these signs. Use this moment, this month of Ramadan, to extend that brotherhood and sisterhood and that love for one another. Use this time. But again, going back to the point of talking to Allah, this is the month where we should create and rekindle that bond with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like I was saying, that we've fallen the emptiness feeling. We've all been there. We've all been there where we feel empty, right? The emptiness is from Allah. Allah is the one who gives a person prosperity, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who also gives somebody adversity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honors someone, and Allah can also dishonor somebody as well. At the instance of a blink of an eye, a person who one time was rich has become the one who's mustahiq of zakat. We've seen the reality. A natural disaster comes, right? Prior to that, just an instance ago, they had everything. A natural disaster comes and wipes everything that they ever built and earning livelihood and a good life and everything. They lose it. Why? The controller of situations is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, the controller of the hearts is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You feel empty, talk to Allah. Seriously, it's a dead concept in today's society. Talk to Allah. You don't have to raise your hand. Wherever you're sitting in your car, sitting at home, wherever you're sitting, just talk, just rock up a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was, I do chaplaincy in a hospital, and it was Zohar Salah, and that week I was in Freeman. Sometime I'm in RVI, sometime in Freeman. And for those of you who've been to Freeman, they have the chapel. So the carpet area is for us to pray Salah. And then they got the benches for the Christians to make their worship. And I was praying my Zohar Salah. As I was praying, there was a woman who came in and she was talking. And I thought she was talking to somebody. So I was just getting on with my Salah. And then I heard, suddenly she said, "Dear God, give him my best. I hope he's well. Take care of him. Love him." And wallahi, in Salah, I froze. I thought, this is what you call dua. She is talking to Allah. This is what dua is. Dua is making conversation, talking to Allah. It's all well and good. We learn all these Rabbanas and all these Allahummas. MashaAllah is good. But how many of us can we say that this Rabbana means this? This Rabbana dua means that. This Rabbana dua is for this. This Allahumma dua is for that. We just memorize it because we were in Maktab and Madrasa. Ustad ji had taught us and we learned it. But how many of us can say that we have? It is better for us to make dua in the language that we can better express ourselves. Whether it's our mother tongue or whether it's English. Whichever language we can express ourselves in the best of make dua to Allah in that language. It does not have to be in Arabic. Understand this. And wallahi, when she was there giving, she was full-blown conversation with Allah, talking, Allah, give him my best, give him the, and I was like, this is when it hit me, that this is how dua should be made. A conversation with Allah, as though Allah is standing. What are we taught when we stand in Salah? We stand in Salah with that, we are taught that stand in Salah is as though you can see Allah. And if you can't condition our mind to that level of piety, then understand that Allah is watching us. That is the lowest level of Iman, that we understand that Allah is watching us. One of the highest level of Iman is that we condition our mind that we are in front of Allah and we are seeing Allah. This is how we should stand in ibadah. Similarly with dua, create that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Talk to Allah like that. This is how we create that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the reasons why we are so distant from deen. Our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not there. And this is why we use the month of Ramadan to create that connection. It is all well and good, you do your sadaqat, khairat and everything and fasting in the month of Ramadan, but if it does not bring that spiritual connection back with Allah, this is why do you think the Quran is emphasized? It's because Allah is talking to us through the Quran. It is wahi, just the way Allah would talk to the prophets, alayhimus salam, through wahi. It was only few prophets who were destined to have that direct conversation with Allah. Adam alayhi salam, Musa alayhi salam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Other prophets would get wahi, the medium, through the angels to have a conversation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our direct conversation, that's why one of the hadiths says, as-salat al-mi'raj al-mu'min. The salah is the mi'raj, is the ascension. That just where Allah took Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to the heavens to have that private conversation. Whatever they discussed, Allah says whatever they discussed was discussed. We do not know what they discussed, right? But we can create that same link with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, albeit behind this celestial veils, but create that relationship. How many of us actually talk to Allah in that manner? Don't need to put your hands up. Right? Ask yourself, how many times have we spoken to Allah in that manner? That, oh Allah, just randomly create that, do that. And then you'll feel that when you treat Allah as your own like that, then you'll see a change in your life. But if it's Allah is just going to be somebody that you just knock on as and when needed, right? Look at it in this instance. Somebody you have, on speed dial or favorites now, like we say on iPhones. I don't know how Androids work. On iPhones, you have the favorites. Somebody you don't need to even tap the name. You just tap on it and you call straight away, right? Those are the special people, right? And then you have somebody who are more extra special. What do? You designate ringtones for them. If the phone rings in any other way, you don't want to hear that. But that particular some special person in our life, they have a special ringtone for them. And then even if the phone's in the other room, you're running to the phone to grab that phone, right? Our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be like that. When we hear the call of a salah, that what does Allah say? That we should hasten to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But today, our relationship with, it's Zuhr time. That comes out. Whereas our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that my Allah is calling me, we make that relationship, we hasten to it. This is how our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be. Right? When you suddenly rock up into someone's house we've not met in a long time, what do they feel? Oh, this person is just coming to me because they need me. Similarly, Allah will feel like that. Somebody just think for yourself. Somebody that I'm sure we've all been there. Someone's hurt us. Someone who's cut ties with us, be they family, friends, or significant other. And suddenly they rock up and like, what do you want? You see a text message, months later, what do you want, right? Or this, or miss you, right? You're not going to want to give the person the time of day because you're realizing that now they suddenly realize your value and they need you. Similarly, Allah will feel like that. But Allah does not want to feel like that. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throughout the certain parts of the day, certain parts of the night, certain parts of the year, Allah has those special moments. Like every night on a tahajjud, on a Friday, Sa'at al-Istijaba, right? Month of Ramadan, right? What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? And this is what I'm going to conclude in. And the third thing I wanted to make mention is tahajjud. Get into the habit of tahajjud. Those of us who are not, use Ramadan as a time to start tahajjud. Wallahi, we ask, I've tried this, I made dua, this, that, the other, and nothing works and nothing. You cannot say you have done everything until you woke up in the dead of night begging Allah in the time of tahajjud. You want something, a degree, a job, somebody in your life, all right? And you're trying everything, it's not working. Have you begged Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the time where everybody else is asleep, in the dead of night, when the whole world is asleep? Have you stood up in prayer crying to Allah, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, I want him, I want her, right? Whatever the case is. If you haven't, then you've not done it. Get in the habit of tahajjud salah. And the best time for tahajjud salah is the suhoor time. Right? There's different levels of tahajjud. Suhoor time is the best time, or then any time of the night, or the lowest level. This is where the ulama say that those of us who are starting to get into the habit of tahajjud, right? Any salah before you retire to bed after Isha salah, any salah after Isha salah before you retire to bed, it's also considered as qiyamul layl. So tahajjud can be prayed there. But the best time is when? The suhoor time. All of us are going to be getting up for suhoor, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes reference to it in the Quran. That, with the suhoor time, one of the best times to make tawbah is also the time of suhoor. وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ, what's that, Hafiz? وَبِالْأَسْحَارِ هُمْ يَسْتَغْفِرُونَ, right? That's what Allah says, yeah? That in the time of suhoor, they make istighfar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making reference to the righteous people. They use that time not to just stuff our mouths with food and then we fill ourselves for suhoor, right? During suhoor time, so that it energizes throughout the day, but we don't realize we ate so much that we're bulking and belching throughout the day, and that's why the barakati breath comes out from, because of all that stuff in our mouth, you know. We treat suhoor is meant to be breakfast. You don't go over filling yourself with breakfast. It's just enough to get us, you know, ourselves up and on with the day, and then we have lunch. But we stuff ourselves, and then we wonder why we got that, like I said, barakati breath, right? And this is why use that time for suhoor, not just for eating. Use that time to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like I said, use Ramadan to set a sort of timetable, a schedule. This time I'll do this time I'll do that. The Ramadan is the month of mercy and forgiveness and pardoning, right? Dua, when we make istighfar is a form of dua as well. And this ummah, the greatest blessing this ummah has ever got, one of the greatest rather, is istighfar. Previous nations, when they disobeyed Allah, what would happen? You look in the Quran, there's so many instances, Allah would send adhab down. How much sin have we committed throughout our lives? We've lied, we've missed salah, we've possibly committed zina, we did this sin, that sin, in drug abuse, alcohol, whatever, right? Great sins we've committed. Has a firebolt or a thunder struck us from the skies? Has a flood come and drowned us? Has the earth cracked in between and took us into the earth? Nothing like that happened. Why? Because possibly somewhere in this part of our world, in our town, somebody's making istighfar, which is upholding the adhab of Allah from us. The adhab of Allah should have, you see it throughout society in the ages. Whenever the ummahs disobeyed Allah, adhab of Allah would come. How much sin have we committed and no adhab has fallen? Someone somewhere is making tawbah, which is holding that adhab. This is why you should make istighfar. Create that bond with Allah. Seek His forgiveness. What is istighfar? It's not just, oh, Allah forgive me and that's it, we'll go. No, again, everything has usul. Number one, right, there's 3 sharait of istighfar, and I'll end it here. Number one, we seek repentance with sincerity, right? We seek not that, oh, Allah, I committed a sin and that's it, right? Forgive me. No. Complete sincerity, humbleness, like as though you're nothing and we are nothing in comparison to Allah. Complete debase yourself, right? Number 2, remorse. We have that remorse, right? Istighfar with sincerity, seeking Allah's attention. Number 2, with remorse. That, oh Allah, I've disgraced myself by disobeying you, transgressing your limits and things like that. I feel so bad and I feel so impure and sick that I've committed such a grave sin, right? And number 3, we make intention not to turn back to that sin again. But if we happen to fall back into sin, rinse and repeat 1, 2, and 3, right? Istighfar with sincerity, we feel the remorse and we make the intention not to go back. We all have been. What does Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? The kullu bani Adam khata'un. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, we are all bound to sin and continuously sin. He didn't say we're all sinners and that's it. Khata'un is used to the people to describe those who will be continuously sinning. But what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say? That he gave us hope. Wa khairul khata'ina tawwabun. The best of sinners is the one who repents. We're all, as humans, we're going to commit sins. We're going to disobey Allah. But the moment we've realized we've sinned, right, we straight away make tawbah. The most arrogant of sinners is the one who does not feel that remorse and regret, right, and does not make tawbah. For that person, there is no hope of hidayah and tawbah. But if a person is committing sin, even whilst committing sin, that guilt and remorse is there, that person still has hope, because he knows or she knows that they're committing, but because of weakness of iman, they can't hold themselves back, but they have that much iman within them that they know they're not proud of their sin. That person, Allah, the elders say that Allah, there is hope for that Allah will forgive that person. Now, take account of our lives. That when I commit a sin, do I feel careless? Or does it not bother me? Or when I'm committing sin, do I feel that regret while I'm committing it? And after I'm committing it? If that isn't the case, we can take our accountability ourselves. That should render sufficient to know where our iman is. So anyway, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to utilize this month of Ramadan. There's a few points that I just wanted to make, main towards these, the discipline and the time sensitive time management. If these two things we can be considerate about, our month of Ramadan will go smoothly and in the best ways. The Ramadan is not about just doing excessive amal and deeds. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say that أكثر عملا. What does it say? الذي خلق الموت ليبلوكم أيكم. What does it say? أحسن عملا. Allah is the one who created life and death to see which of you do the best of all deeds. He doesn't look at quantity, right? Even in your little of ibadah that you do with quality and sincerity and perfectly with the best of iman and the best of attention towards Allah. That will be enough. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the best of understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to spend our Ramadan in the best of all ways. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from sin, in particular in the month of Ramadan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq to make this Ramadan as a means of change in our life. This is the main thing, that we use Ramadan as a change in life. Those of us who are already, mashallah, good habits and we're righteous, use this Ramadan as a booster, so that we better our Ramadan. This Ramadan should be better than our last. Our next Ramadan should be better than this. Wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Brothers said that there will be a question answer.